Good evening, my name is Elizabeth Heaton, and tonight I'll be teaching a third grade reading comprehension lesson working on identifying the main idea of a text and the supporting details. My objective throughout the lesson is for students to identify, understand, and utilize several strategies to help them identify a main idea in a text as well as the supporting details. My goal at the end of the lesson would be for students to comprehend and restate the main idea of several passages and stories independently. So let's get started. Let's say, for example, we all have probably sent a text message to a friend, right? We've sent a message to a friend, or we've seen a message that was sent to a friend. Well, today we are going to discuss why it is important to form a main idea statement. You see, when you send a message to a friend, you actually give them the main idea or the gist of your message. You don't want to give them all the details because it would be too much to type, and your friend would probably lose interest in reading such a long text. Let's say, for example, you want to ask your friend if they want to go to the movies over the weekend. A main idea statement would be, hey, do you want to go to the movies on Friday night? You wouldn't give your friend all the details about what movie was showing, what times they were playing, how you're going to get there, what snacks you're going to have, and all that in one message, right? Your main idea statement to your friend is, do you want to go to the movies on Friday night? That's simple and to the point. Your friend knows what the text is about. And good readers use these kind of details throughout the story. They read through all these details to help them find the gist of the story or the main idea, what the story is mostly about. One way we can help remember what a main idea is thinking about a chocolate chip cookie. I printed out this visual. Now, a chocolate chip cookie is our main idea, right? It's what the story is mostly about. Just kind of like in the example I gave to you earlier about going to the movies. That would be your main idea, the chocolate chip cookie. Now, your supporting details that you guys could discuss later in a text message would explain, support, and describe the main idea about going to the movies, right? So that could be your show times, what movies you wanted to see, what snacks you were going to get, your transportation, that sort of thing. Those are your chocolate chips throughout the story. So remember, your main idea is what the story is mostly about. Now, I want to explain this picture to you in just one sentence, but I want you to see the whole picture in your head. Pretend you can't see it, even though I am showing it to you, okay? So here's your picture. You can only see it through my words, okay? My sentence is, the kids are at the birthday party. In one sentence, I was able to identify the main idea. From my sentence, you know that they are at a birthday party. You also have a good idea of who is at the birthday party. It's not just adults, it's children. Now, tell me some other details you might see in this picture. You might say the balloons, the cake, the snacks, the party hats make you realize that these kids are at a birthday party. But remember, the main idea is what the picture is mostly about. It's the kids at the birthday party. So now let's take a look at a story. I'm going to read a story to you, and the name of the story is called Sleeping Fish. Now, as I read, I want you to try to figure out what the main idea is. And some strategies you can use to figure out what the main idea is to think in your head, what is the story mostly about? And in this particular text, we have a picture, and pictures can be very helpful as you're reading. So I want you to look at the picture and see if it gives you any clues as to what the story is mostly about, your main idea. And I also want you to see if you can find any words that repeat themselves. A lot of times repeated words throughout our text give us a clue as to what the main idea or the gist of the story is. So let's read the story aloud. Fish sleep in different ways. Some sleep in the sand, some sleep on their sides, others sleep on their tails. One fish sleeps while standing on its head. Now that's a lot of information about fish, right? I think that this story is mostly about fish sleeping because I can look in my picture and see that fish sleep, right? That picture was very helpful. Now I see a word that's repeated a lot throughout the text is sleep, right? I see sleep here, sleep there, sleep, sleep. One strategy would be to highlight those words so you can see that they've repeated themselves. Now, I know that fish sleep, but looking at the picture and reading back through the text, we would know that the fish all sleep differently. So all those details help me to determine that the main idea of the story is that all fish sleep differently. Yes, some sleep on their side, some sleep on their head, and that sort of thing, but that's not the main idea or the gist of the story, right? What the story is mostly about is that fish sleep different. So remember, as you're reading throughout your text, to look for words that repeat themselves, look at pictures, and try to determine what the story is mostly about. Let's try one more together to make sure we have a good understanding. Now this time, I'm not going to give you the title of the story, because sometimes the title really helps us figure out what the main idea is. As I'm reading the story, I want you to think in your head, what would a good title for the story would be? What's the main idea of the story? Okay, and remember, as we read, to try to figure out what the story is mostly about, look at the pictures and see if you see any words that are repeated. I got up early. I jumped out of bed and quickly I washed and dressed. Then I ran down the stairs. I gulped down my breakfast. I couldn't wait to go on my first camping trip. Now looking at the picture, the little boy looks like he's already camping and setting up a tent. There's a few words that repeat themselves throughout. I see the word I, but that's really about it. Now at the beginning, I see a clue right here. It says, I got up early. And if I go back to the last sentence, it says, I couldn't wait to go on my first camping trip. So we know there's a lot of details throughout this story. He got up early, he jumped out of bed, he washed and got dressed, he began to eat his breakfast really fast, rushed down the stairs. All those details lead us to our main idea. And the main idea is right here at the end. I couldn't wait to go on my first camping trip. I rushed to go on my camping trip, right? He did all these things in a hurry to make sure he could go on his camping trip on time. So we use the strategies again to go through and find the words that repeated themselves. We looked at the picture. We tried to figure out what the story was mostly about. Remember to use those 3 strategies as you're reading on your own. Now, the next thing I want you guys to do when you're working on your own is to read a story. And remember to find those supporting details throughout your story, right? To find those supporting details, look at your pictures if you have any in your text. Look for words that repeat themselves, and also try to remember what the story is mostly about. Remember, going back to our chocolate chip cookie, the main idea is the whole cookie, right? So when you're reading your story, reading through all these ideas, see if you can connect them in any ways to see what the main idea is about, right? The whole chocolate chip cookie. And that'll give you a good idea on how to find the main idea and the supporting details. Now, for students working on their own during this lesson, one thing that I would have them do is to go back through. I would review those strategies with them, and I could also show them this helpful visual of a hand. Now, if you think about a hand, the main idea, there's several details right throughout our story. There's detail 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. And that makes up our whole hand, which is the main idea. So if I was to carry this over into writing, I would have students, draw a visual of their hand, and they could pick the topic of a story. Maybe it's going on a trip to Disney World, and they could give a detail about the rides and about the food they ate, where they stayed, and so forth and so on. But they would all tie back to that main idea of Disney World. And I could utilize those strategies that we taught earlier in the lesson to carry over into their writing. Now, for students that are advanced, like Cohen in the data sheet, I could have him go ahead and write this story on his own. He could type it up. He probably wouldn't need as much guidance from me. For students that were struggling or not as proficient as the advanced students, I would continue to reteach this lesson. I'd probably provide them with a visual of those 3 strategies to remember to help them find the main idea. And we'll probably stick to short passages and visuals to help them recall those things to their memory. Throughout the lesson, as I'm teaching it, I would be asking students questions to make sure they're actively engaged, making sure they have eye contact. I'd use specific cues like eyes on me and that sort of thing to make sure everyone is actively engaged. And throughout the lesson, when I am engaging with them in the we do portion of the lesson, I would have them raise their hand or buzz in however possible to provide an answer to make sure that we're all on the same track. and to use the information that they're giving me to guide my instruction to see if they are mastering the skill. And so the next step in this lesson would be for the students to read a story on their own and identifying the main idea and the supporting details on their own independently. So hopefully that assessment given back to me would guide my instruction further. Thank you so much, and please let me know if you have any questions.